When I look at most of the big entrepreneurs, the Zuckerbergs of this world and all that, nobody inspires me because they all have sold their soul at some point.
Today, I'm joined by one of my brothers, Lennie Moreno. This is going to be an epic conversation as to how to be wildly successful in life and business without selling our soul.
If I cannot have my integrity, then I do not own myself anymore.
This man's been canceled over and over and over again on socials, but most of the thing he keeps on posting keeps on going absolutely viral.
I encourage any entrepreneur who is listening to this podcast that they may be faced with a choice, and it's okay to navigate, but don't sell your soul and don't misalign with your integrity, because ultimately your story will be your story. And at some point, if there's a little comma in your story and they're gonna say, yeah, but here, you'll never have true legacy, and nobody will really be inspired.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr Espen podcast. I'm your host, Espen. Today, I'm joined by one of my brothers, Lennie Moreno. This is going to be an epic conversation as to how to be wildly successful in life and business without selling our soul. And we're going to touch on some topics that you might be familiar with, that might be a little bit taboo because of the whole narrative that's taking place. But Lennie is one of the few people that I know that have been able to bridge the gap between how to be wildly successful, how to be truly authentic to his own belief, his own signature, and his own story. I mean, this man's been canceled over and over and over again on socials, but everything that he keeps on posting, I should say, most of the thing he keeps on posting keeps on going absolutely viral. And we're blessed to have him with us today. So Lennie Moreno is a self-made serial entrepreneur and currently the driving force behind the fast-growing human luxury fashion brand called Place of Elms. He also leads what's called the Freedom Accelerator Fund, which is a platform that empowers promising startups and embodies integrity with deep seed stage capital. However, Lennie's influence extends much beyond the whole being successful and having a massive exit, which he had some years back. But he's also had over 100 million views on his Instagram account. He's been reposted by Elon Musk and many others. And he's a massive advocate for self-empowerment, for freedom, and for human rights. And he really started getting known for his voice and unique message back in 2020 during the whole scamdemic. So we're going to try and cover off on some of these points today. But I want to start by saying welcome, brother. How are you, mate?
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you. That was a great intro, man. I could not have said it better myself.
That it was so cool. We met. We're both part of Aubrey Marcus's Inner Circle. I flew over to Texas. I was just kind of hanging around, getting to meet some people, and I met you, and I was like, quote unquote, fell in love right away. I'm like, there's a kindred spirit, there's a brother, there's a powerful man, and just having heard a little bit about the work that you do and who you are, I was like, yes, and we got along right away, playing pickleball, just hanging out. I just firstly want to just acknowledge you for who you are, bro. It takes hard work to get to where you are, and it takes courage to remain in the fire the way you have over these years. So it's great to be with you again, man.
Well, I really appreciate that. It's a great honor for me. And meeting you, I remember we definitely clicked right away. Any value that we can provide to anyone who's listening about anything, the goal is to expand the collective consciousness as far and wide as possible and get as many people as possible to think critically, to not absorb all the stuff that's coming at us from every direction, and to get the opportunity to think for ourselves and to make the best moves that's good for our inner growth, for our loved ones, for our communities. So I'm with you there.
Man, awesome. So just let's start with the business side of things. I know a lot of people are interested in how to be wildly successful, financially free, but also doing so without sacrificing our own uniqueness or our soul. And so I'll share a statistic. There's a book that's written in Australia, actually, by Bronnie, Ware is her last name spelled. And she identified, after surveying thousands of people on their deathbed, that the number one most likely regret when we are on our deathbed at some point, when the body dies at least, is that we didn't live a life true to us, but a life that other people expected of us. So the biggest, most likely regret that listeners and viewers will have in this very moment is that we aren't living our authentic truth. How do you combine living deeply authentically, copping the shit for that, because you will, when you are truly expressing yourself, outside of the narrative, beyond the status quo. How do we combine living a truly authentic, honest, integral life, being integral to our own unique signature, and be wildly successful at the same time? What are your thoughts?
I think that's a great question, and it's probably something that everyone should be looking into, because it's easy to go along with what's popular and what's profitable, what's like the new thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to start this new AI business, and I'm going to follow wherever the wave is going, because it seems like I can make 20 grand a month, 50 grand a month, 100K a month. And there's all these ways that you can make money, but does it speak to you? And I think that this is the number one question that most entrepreneurs have to ask themselves: is what resonates with your heart? What resonates with your soul? Does it feel authentic to you? And it's very difficult to navigate a life where, on one hand, you get extreme pressure from society to pay your bills, to be successful, to have some sort of image, to be able to just go through the day to day and have some self respect. And for that, unfortunately, we live in a financial system, and this financial system requires us to work, requires us to find ways to make money. And from there, you have to gravitate towards something that's real for you. And, I can share a little story, because a lot of people say, yeah, but you started these companies, and ultimately, like, you did well, so you had to still have investors on your side, and maybe some of the things that the banking world and the investors world is not necessarily in line with your integrity, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always difficult to navigate this journey, but to stay 100% true to your values and to your heart and to what resonates with you. So, you know, once in 2020, there was this scandemic, the way that you called it. And what happened is I started to speak out pretty heavily and pretty loudly. And at the time, I had 70 employees. So there's my board who like reaches out and say, hey, like, we don't know what this is. Like, we're not sure about like where this is going. So you have a really loud opinion. You're saying things very loud. You're like intimidating for some people, and a lot of people look up to you. So you have to maybe, you know, like, be careful. And I said, no, I'm not gonna be careful. I'm gonna still release, like, I've released like 2, 3 rap music videos. One is called Wake Up, one is called They Won't Divide Us, one is called um, Just Say No. So it's all things that were like related to like what was coming, which was the vaccine at the time. And I really, like, once you're just a bit awake and you know the agenda and you understand like how they bring a problem, they have the solution ready for the problem in order to take more of your rights and slowly, slowly control you more and more. And once you just understand that agenda, for me, just like going back, it was 9/11 when they had the Patriot Act that was ready, like right after the planes hit the towers, like right away, like all our rights. Now we have to like cross the airports with like heavy security and all that. It's like all that was ready. They just needed like a spark. Same thing with COVID. And my integrity was, I was willing to lose my CEO position, lose my work, basically, like the company that I founded. And because, I could be voted out to some extent, because like the board was 5 people, and they could just vote to say, well, Lenny is not fit, to because he's dangerous for the future and the health of the company. And you know what? I stuck to my guns, and I had a fairly healthy board for the most part. And at the end of the day, they knew that I was bringing the numbers in. They knew that I was bringing the company up, that I had the best interests of the company at heart, and most importantly, that I wasn't going to sell my soul for anything. It's like, what will people remember me at the end of the day? will they remember me for like my cars and my house and my, you know, the numbers I have? It's like nobody cares about that stuff. People, they will remember you for your heart, for what you did, for what you know, your values, your contribution. This is what they will speak about at your funeral. They're not going to talk about your material things. They will talk about the spiritual things. And this is where, for me, it's like as long as I'm connected to nature, um, like it's impossible for me to sell my soul. Like it's the number one thing that like I just can't sell. It's like it doesn't matter like how much money, you know, bring on the best offer on the planet. If I cannot have my integrity, then I do not own myself anymore. And I
Phew.
don't want that. So yeah, so that's like a short story or long story, you know, to explain that most entrepreneurs will be faced with a choice one day where they're going to have a fast track route, and the fast track route will require them to compromise on their integrity. And then there's going to be the slow, little bit more painful, you know, a little bit more constraining route that will help them to slowly become stronger and stronger, because you have to go through the rough path in order to build, you know, scar tissue and build yourself and build your your status. So for me, I I encourage any entrepreneur who is listening to this podcast that they may be faced with a choice, and it's okay to navigate, and but don't sell your soul and don't misalign with your integrity, because ultimately your story will be your story. And at some point, if there's a little comma in your story and they're going to say, yeah, but here, you know, you took the, you'll never have true legacy, and nobody will really be inspired. When I look at most of the big entrepreneurs, the Zuckerbergs of this world and all that, nobody inspires me, because they all have sold their soul at some point in order to have some lobbyist group to sneak in and be like, okay, in order for this favor to go faster, for you to be, you know, part of this group and that group, there's always some integrity that's being sold. And I'm just not with that. So, yeah.
Dude. So listeners and viewers tuning into this, maybe ask the question, if that crossroad decision has already arrived, if you made the right decision, your intuition will know. Or if it hasn't, to be clear on the decision that you will make when that decision arrives. Because of course, as Lenny says, it's not just in business for, you know, successful entrepreneurs, it's also in life, right? So I love that. And this is why I wanted to start there, bro, because that in itself is phenomenal. Imagine that, you know, having your board going, and then, no, this is me and this is who I am. And still exiting successfully and now continuing to speak. And I love how you just, you know, Elon Musk just takes what you've shared and just reposts it. That's just like awesome. And it's good, because I'm not saying that I agree with everything that you say, even though a lot of it, but the fact that you are speaking your truth and people are sharing it is honorable. I want to just make the transition here. We've got a successful exit, living in authenticity, copying it during that period of time, getting cancelled over and over and over again, and then deciding to start a luxury brand, you know, a luxury fashion brand, Place of Elms. Tell us about and you talk a lot about vibration and what you're doing with this. Tell us about Place of Elms and why you started it.
Yeah, yeah, I will absolutely. I just want to touch on like the Elon Musk share and all that before that. The reality is that I don't agree with Elon Musk for most of the things that he says or does. And but it doesn't change that the collective consciousness can still find ways to unite ourselves, and you know, to agree on certain fundamentals that the critical thinking mind is like capable of doing. So even if I don't necessarily agree, and I have been very critical of him, like it's okay for me to applaud when he says something that's positive, and then to disagree when, you know, he's doing something that's wrong for the world. So, and that, you can look in my videos. There's plenty of videos where I criticize some of the companies that he's working for, because I don't believe personally that it will ultimately benefit us. Flipping on to Place of Elms, I think it's a good segue, because in in the world that's run by a lot of evil, I would say, specifically in the fashion world, if you really dig into like who's at the top of the fashion world, and you will find a lot of uh, Satanism, and you will find a lot of pedophilia. And the more you dig, the more you realize that it's a closed group. And this closed group will only allow certain brands to pop off if it follows a certain agenda. If you look at some of the biggest magazines, they're all leaning on one side politically. They're all following the same agenda that the World Economic Forum is talking about.
Would you
Uh,
say that that's the same as Hollywood? That you only get successful if you do submit to certain rituals, certain things, certain whatever?
mhm. Yeah, what I'm referring to is as long as you follow the narrative of the World Economic Forum, which is basically the international group that is basically setting the agenda to say, okay, this is where the world needs to go as a whole, and then they reunite all the most powerful people, and some of the people in the fashion are in there
You
as
will
well.
own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So public.
Yeah,
Like, come on. Anyway,
yes.
back to you, bro.
So so the reason why I started Place of Elms is basically because I was looking back at my inner child, and I say, I just did a tech company in the solar energy world in order to help and empower small mom and pop shops. So I said, what's the next thing? The next thing is going to be, I have to take my time, I have to zoom out, and I have to go back to my inner child. And my inner child is an artist. So, I used to do a lot of graffitis. I was drawing. Like when I was really young, I actually wanted to be an architect, and I was drawing all the time. And in fashion, I was always a little bit like before my time. So I looked at like what would be fun and exciting while providing value to the world. And I digged into the fashion industry, and I looked how bad it is and how it's badly run. And I said, there's missing integrity, there's missing values, self-respect, strength, bit more like pro-human values, specifically in the luxury space. And I said I'm going to do something that's both fun and rewarding for the creative part that I enjoy, which I love to design. Every piece that you see on the site, I've designed those. So it's really a process that I take my time. 3 years it took me to sit down, to design, to travel across Europe in order to find my suppliers that have the same values as Place of Elms. Plenty of them, they were good. They could even do it at a better price. They could even do it faster. Um, and unfortunately, they were not in line with my values. So I had to say no to a bunch of them and take a financial loss in order to stick with the integrity that I want to push, because the slogan of Place of Elms is luxury with integrity. So everything from the fabric to the supplier to the design to the packaging, everything follows the same energetic field, which has to keep the same level of integrity, and it has to stay high in vibration. So that way, when you rock a t-shirt, you know that like it hasn't been schemed through here or cut corners there or had to, shake hands with the devil over there. It's everything from top to bottom. When I wear Place of Elms, I feel energetically light. I feel good. I know where it's coming from. And that's the energy that I wish I could, spread all over the luxury fashion first. And breaking news, by the way, I'm working currently on an affordable line, which is going to be very affordable, very accessible, same type of swag and cuts, and we're going to get the highest quality possible for the best available price. And there's going to be women's as well that is going to come out, and it should come out in fall. So you can stay on the lookout for that. But all that to say that Place of Elms is a project that's both fun and that brings value to the world. And my hope with this is ultimately, I hope that the big luxury brands, they will reap what they've sown from all these years, and a lot of people are slowly waking up to the industry. A lot of people are are doing some boycotts of these brands, specifically since they've exposed how they make their bags, etc. And then um, the sweatshops and the work laborers, and how they like provide visas to people from China to work in Italy just to say made in Italy, but they're paying them the same like super low, disgusting wages. There's so many schemes that they're doing in order to keep co- the cost super low, and they're in the business of deception. Their business is to deceive you. So Place of Elms is a business that's there to stay transparent, and this is why I believe that it's going to be extremely successful. We're way ahead of our time. I think 5, 6 years from now is really when it's really going to start to blow up. And then these big groups, they're going to look at a company like Place of Elms and they're going to be like, okay, I need to take a page out of that book. And if Place of Elms can influence these huge companies to be more focused on integrity and spread pro-human values and everything that the world needs in order to elevate in consciousness, then I believe that Place of Elms will have done its duty.
Phew. It's a flagship, bro. I love it. And it's not always that this happens in the world, but when companies like that come around, it sets a new standard and a benchmark for future industry. I love the fact that you talk about integrity there. I only found out this in the last 5 years that certain fabrics have certain frequencies, and there are certain fabrics that you shouldn't mix and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and in terms of the synthetics versus naturals and so on?
Yes, absolutely. When you look at a lot of the big uh, big companies that are doing like yoga wear, um, like everything that goes up your crotch basically, and what you're actually pushing is like petrol and plastic, like all these polyesters and polyamide. It holds a certain frequency, and when you sweat on top of it, there's thousands of studies that you can find online that explains how many diseases that creates. But because it's cheap and because there's a lot of marketing dollars behind it, people are still buying it. You know, beautiful models, um, it looks good, the cut is good, and it makes them look better, but it doesn't mean that it's healthy for you. So it's important to look for products and fabrics that are actually complementing your human body frequency. Organic cotton, you can go linen, you can go bamboo. Just just with these three, you can do like 3/4 of your wardrobe. Then in terms of anything that's a bit more classy, you can go into cashmere, you can go into silk, you can go into merino wool. So all those as well stays natural. But as soon as you go into the world of like plastic and petrol and recycled and all that, they're now saying like, oh, I'm good. I'm a good company because I use recycled polyester. It's like, no, you're not good. Like what you're doing is you're taking something that's already disgusting and toxic and that has already been used, and then you use it again. It's like it's not very smart. But they're trying to paint it as like we're trying to contribute to climate change, which is a total scam, by the way. So it's important that people they do their research a little bit and that they focus on like what's important for them and like what's important for their loved ones. Because if I come around and I'm swagged out and be like, wow, like Lenny's got like decent style, but on top of that, it's good fabrics, that's positive, that's good for me, that the whole chain has integrity. It's like obviously, it's almost like wearing a badge of honor.
Yeah, I love it, man. Okay, tell us a little bit about what you think is happening in the world right now. You talk about the expansion of consciousness, and we had some extensive, awesome, deep conversations about this over in Texas not long ago. What are your thoughts on what's taking place? What are some of the themes without getting, too sidetracked? What do you think is important for the world to know right now?
Well, there are a lot of things happening um, politically. I think it's important for us to disconnect from a lot of it, specifically when the news media is trying to bury one story with another story because people are waking up faster and faster. And now it's like they have to pile on big, huge events in order to be like, oh my God, have you seen what happened here? And then you're not even done like fixing that problem that, oh, now there's a new war that started. And it's like, if you can't, if people are waking up too fast at some point, you need a world war. And that is what I feel is the direction that they're trying to take. I'm hoping that it's not going to be that because what I'm hoping, which is maybe a bit far fetched because the military is trained to just follow orders as a whole. But the reality is that most of the military needs to acknowledge the fact when, like, who are they really fighting for? And what are they actually doing? And who are they empowering? And why are they being flown to foreign land in order to do certain things? Is this really to the benefit of their families, their day to day, their children? Because these are the most respectable, admirable, inspirational human beings are the people that are selfless, willing to, to fight for freedom, for country, for family. And I feel like um, we're we're getting to a point of the awakening where this is where we're at. It's like, well, if the agenda that they want to take the world and there's too many people that are awake, the only thing that's left is basically the military industrial complex and then the rest of the world. And then it becomes like, okay, they're going to give like huge benefits, huge money, huge power to the military industrial complex in order to make all of us acquiesce, to the will of the the elites that ultimately basically just want to use us like a battery for, whatever that they want to do, like energetically. Because all we are at the end of the day is just we are we're energy stored in a human body, and then that energy can be going in all sorts of direction. But the people that want to control you, they want to use and suck that energy. And this is the one thing that we cannot allow. We cannot allow our beautiful God-given energy to be spread in places that are not positive for the world, that are not positive for the future. So this is why we have to be like extremely mindful. And I will add to your question, like, where's the world going, and how can we be prepared based on whatever's going on? The most important thing is for us, first and foremost, to be as independent as possible. We cannot rely on the state or the government because as soon as we have to give up something in order to receive something that we need. And this is a transaction that's never to the advantage of the people. So we have to be careful with that. The more prepared we are whenever there's a crisis that hits or, a war that starts, the best thing is to always have a little bit extra food, like, some storable food, maybe have a backup generator or, some maybe one or two solar panels with an inverter and a battery backup system. Um, some you can even go to the level of like flip phones, and satellite phones if you're really into it. But I think that, you know, me personally, like, I don't really go into like those extremes, but it's important to feel like you're independent and you always have a little bit of extra. So instead of putting money into like booze and drugs and going out and clubbing and, popping bottles and all the stuff that is worthless and meaningless, why don't you invest that money in a future that's secure for your family? And, just spend a little extra for the things that will ultimately make you and your family and your community more powerful, more abundant. And and it's important because I don't know, I'm not holding the strings and nobody's holding the strings on me, so I don't have access to the ultimate information. All I can do is grab the information that's being provided to me, do the proper research, and use critical thinking in order to do what I believe my heart is saying, and share that with the people. So I wouldn't know, where exactly the world is going, but one thing's for sure is that on my side, I'm prepared and I'm ready, and I feel free and I feel independent, and, you know my soul is not for sale. It's never been sold, and I feel as light as as I've ever been. And this is what I wish for everyone, is to really feel good within their body and to do things and use their energy to serve, their family and their community, as opposed to serving a corrupt system that doesn't necessarily have our best interests at heart.
Mic drop moment, brother. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's interesting. I read some research about a year ago. I was talking about this thing called Project Looking Glass. There was this very advanced technology that was discovered a long time back. Now, I haven't validated this research, but I'll share it as a story. And the CIA got a hold of it, and they recognized that with this advanced tech, which they believed was extraterrestrial in nature, that they could feed it a set of algorithms. So they could say, hey, if we do this, what happens then? And this tech, or this looking glass, when they fed it a certain amount of information, if we do this, what happens then? They would use it. So one of the engineers that worked on the project for 6 months said that they would use this to control the narrative, to control, people globally to, acquiesce, to be in fear, to submit. Because when we're in fear, then we give away our power. You spoke to that before. But they would use this to know what to do. But then he said it was interesting because at the exact same time as it was the end of the Mayan calendar, which was December 2012, when people thought that it was the end of the world. It wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of what Plato referred to as the Great Year, which is a 25,000 to 26,000 year cycle. In astrology, it's called precession. The world actually spins on an axis. It takes 26,000 years for one full cycle. And it just so happened that in December 2012, we were the furthest away from the sun in terms of precession, which means that we were literally receiving less light upon the planet, as in the Dark Ages, right? Go figure. They talk about the yugas and those ages through in Nadis and Indian scriptures. It's very interesting to see how all of it kind of seems to be telling the same story in different languages. And nonetheless, he was saying that they were able to control the narrative beautifully until December 2012. And at that point, no matter what you fed into, what you programmed or information you gave into this Project Looking Glass, it would only give you one outcome, irrelevant of what you put in there. And he said, if I had to give it a name, I will call it the Great Awakening. He says, and this is why I wanted to mention this, I want your thought on this. Maybe you have a different idea. And this is, again, just sharing a story and some research. You guys can look this up. But he said, it's as if the God and the devil, light and darkness, as an example, good and bad, is playing chess. And the devil has just realized that he has lost in 7 moves. He's checkmate in 7 moves. And all he can do at the moment is to delay the game. COVID, maybe that was a distraction to delay the game, for a money grab, power grab. Without going into all the details of all the events, what are your thoughts on the spiritual aspect that the world, that we're going through now?
Well, I think it's very interesting, the analogy that you just made, because as much as we as like people that are trying as hard as we can to follow the light or follow our heart, or follow our calling or our spiritual purpose, we may get demonized for going too much into a direction that is, what people say, it's a little woohoo, it's like a little bit far-fetched. We cannot discard anything, and it's important to keep an open mind about all these stories. But as the world has thousands of stories, and hundreds of thousands of different ways to say, oh, this means that, and this is connected to this, and this whole like global cult works because it's like this is attached to this, to that, and they make like all these like complicated diagrams that explains how everything is connected. And as much as I can agree or disagree with any of that work, which I think is super positive, and it's important that the people understand that, as much as that is important, my call for everyone is usually to always look at what is going to make your life better. What is going to make your family and your community better? What will be the small little changes that you can bring into your life in order to make everything more abundant, more clear, more fun, more enjoyable? Because as soon as we get really deep into these rabbit holes, sometimes it's filled with darkness. I've been there. I've seen the light, I've seen the darkness, I've looked left and right, I went to the spiritual, I went to the material, and at the end of the day, I look myself in the mirror and I say, these are all images and reflections of myself. What I have control over is myself. So if I can control my own perceptions and see what will benefit my life on a daily basis and what are the little moves and the little changes, like energetically, that I can do in order to make my life better, then this is where I have to work. This is where I have to invest. So I do believe in the spiritual, and the story that you just shared, I believe in it just as much as I believe into like another story that could also make sense. But at the end of the day, I always encourage everyone to say, look at your life and look at the small changes that will make you more independent and more powerful, so you can inspire the rest of the people around you to be stoic and to be solid and fearless and respectful and just build like a healthy life. So
Mm. I love that answer because on the higher side of things, it's like, oh yeah, maybe the light is already won, and what is there to do. But on the other side, you kind of mentioned, you kind of answered the question in a similar way to my friend Dr. John DiMartini when I said, hey, he was telling the story about one lady asking where the world is going, and his answer was, if you have to ask that question, you're not a part of creating it. And I thought, oh, that hurts, but that's so true. You basically said exactly the same thing. There's no need to look out and outside of yourself and to wait. Just take the actions today that'll enable you and your family to become more sovereign, more inspired, to live more beautiful, true, authentic, loving lives. I love it. Take a responsibility into our hands. As I say, it's our job to bring heaven on earth, not to wait for anyone else to do that. This is our opportunity right here, right now. Dude,
you're
poof,
you're
bring it home.
you're so right. You're so right, because I think that most people, they forget the amount of power that they really have,
Mm.
because our power is a currency that is being snatched and stripped from you know media, politicians, pharmaceuticals, the food we eat, everything around us is made to strip our power away. When the truth is that we are so powerful, and we just have to accept it, and we just have to embrace it, and we have to hold the confidence in order to wield the power that we know we truly have in a way that's inspirational, in a way that it's beneficial for the people around us. But it's important for people to remind themselves that it's only a perception. It's a perception that we are powerless. It's a perception that we have to go and acquiesce to the government when something happens, or we have to follow this rule and that rule that may not be to our best interest, or follow a a law that is unjust, for example. It's all based on perceptions. And if we can control our own perceptions, then we slowly grab the power that has been stripped away from us, and we put it back into our soul, back into our hearts. And then we can become more confident, more focused, more stoic. And then we inspire the rest of the world to do the same thing. It's like, nobody's going to strip my power away. I believe in myself. I believe what I'm capable of. And I'm barely even scratching the surface at this point. I'm just I'm just like playing around right now in like a sandbox, when I know that like it can be an ocean, and there's so many other things that I know I'm capable of, and it's just I have to focus, I have to believe it, and then I have to use the power of positive visualization and manifestation. And usually when I do that, I always create magic. It's just I really have to believe it, and I have to stop with the external perceptions of like, no, we're small, we're not capable, this is far fetched, this is crazy. No, no, no. I think Lenny, you're going too far like that way. It's like, no, no, no. There's no limit. Like the main advantage and the main difference between us and robots, us and AI, is that we have connection to source. We have connection to download infinite amount of information that we can create ourselves. And then the robot takes the information that we get spiritually from the source, and then we feed the AI with it. And we just feed them with all the beauty and all the amazing things that we have. And then we just give them more and more and more power. And then we slowly acquiesce to them. We're like, yeah, what's the answer to this? Let's go to AI. And the AI is giving us the answer of something that ultimately we know that we can find within ourselves or within source. So it's important to know that like we are magical creatures, and it's not what the BBC or CNN or Fox News or any of these guys are telling us that we are or we are not, or Hollywood or any of these fools. Like we are extremely powerful, and we're extremely beautiful as well.
Amen, brother. I've got one last question for you straight off the cuff, but before I do, I'm sure people are curious now. You've had over 100 million views on, socials and been shared by many incredible humans. Instagram is Lennie Boy, LennieboY. So go and check that out if you're interested. And again, this is Lennie's opinion. It may not be suiting your opinion, but it's good to see how, some of these topics are spoken about, because you do not find any of that in mainstream media. That is for sure. So it could be useful. And also, if you want to check out the amazing luxury brand Place of Elms, ELMS.com. Last question for you, straight off the cuff, brother. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. I want you now to imagine that you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, tuning in, watching, listening to your message. When you're ready, take a breath and do share. What is your message to the world right now?
Well, I believe that currently, um, right now, this time, the most important thing is to be united. And there's all sorts of things that are designed to divide us, from media to Hollywood to religion, even to culture. Um, and people get divided so easily. And it's sad to see, because as soon as we don't have the same opinion on one thing, because we've been brainwashed from the right side, and someone else was brainwashed by the left side, and then they clash. But the left side and the right side are the same people that are dividing us. And what's important for us is to stay in the middle, and to know that we are all brothers and sisters, and we can stay united even if we disagree on certain things, but we cannot let it escalate to a point where we are divided, because it's within the division that all of the solutions that the establishment is bringing down on us is giving them more power, and is making us more and more enslaved into the system. They use and they create those division moments in order to keep us away from each other. Because as soon as we're united, we become way too powerful, and we realize that the the people that don't have our best interests at heart are just a very small group of people. But us all together, regardless of gender and race and religious beliefs and all that, at the end of the day, what I believe is that everybody has God within themselves. And you can you can think it's this God, you can think it's that God. It doesn't matter. It's still God within yourself. And if we all agree that we have that power, we have that magic, it's okay to agree and disagree on certain things, but it's not okay for us to be divided because we're not seeing life in the same way. It's important to stay calm. It's important to stay, respectful, happy. And this is how, when a big crisis is going to happen, which, they always have one looming in the corner, how are we going to respond to that? And we need to respond with love. We need to respond with us being united. and not being distracted by the narrative that they will create, which is always made to divide us and to control us more and more. So my message is just stay united, man.
Unity. Thank you, brother, for your time, for jumping on today. Really great conversation. I know a lot of people would be loving this, sharing it far and wide. If this has been useful, spread it as far and wide as you can. Share it with 5 people right away. And thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Lennie Moreno, everybody.